Hi, welcome to Women of Worth Wednesday, or WOW for short. We are so happy to have you joining us today and welcome those from all over the world. It's been so amazing to hear from people from different countries and all over the world. Because of technology, we get to connect. I love working with High Five Live and really enjoy this opportunity to meet with you and share content. They have some amazing content that they share every day, and Wednesdays is kind of the day for women, but we love when men share these videos and comment on the content. Today, I'd like to kind of tag on to what's happening with the Light the World campaign. If you're not familiar with it, you can go to lds.org and find a calendar of ways to light the world from the 1st of December through the 25th. And it's not too late to join in. Today is about forgiveness and judgment, and I'd like to share some thoughts on that. It's a sticky subject. You know, I think C.S. Lewis said it best, that we talk about forgiveness in terms of these glowing ideas until you actually have to do it, and it takes a lot of courage. And that's a total paraphrase, but I love the story and family, the very imperfect family of Lehi in the Book of Mormon. And for those of you that are familiar with the journeys and the happenings of this very imperfect family, it gives me great hope. The relationships are complicated, and they're a lot like the family relationships we may be dealing with. And especially during the holidays when we're together a lot more, I think a lot about Nephi and his brothers Laman and Lemuel. And there's various encounters where his brothers really make life hard for Nephi, from beating him up to tying him up to threatening to kill him to mocking him. And there's a place in the scriptures in this story where Nephi really teaches a powerful principle about forgiveness, where he quickly forgives. And I think about the fact that when I am faced with an opportunity to forgive, I often hold Nephi on this really high standard that I need to do it quickly. And it's not always that easy. Sometimes there's some really complicated history, and sometimes there's ongoing issues that continue to trigger us and make it hard to be in a place of forgiveness. And so I love that we watch the rest of this story kind of unfold. Nephi really becomes this amazing, great prophet, not in spite of his brothers, but I believe because of them. They have such a challenging place in his life that he's really forced to develop his spiritual muscles and emotional muscles to move past and not be trapped by this contention. So later on in the scriptures, after they've already made it to the promised land, and after there's been so many encounters of Nephi quickly forgiving and pleading with God to help him understand faith and move forward in his life and not get stuck by this anger, he's commanded to depart and leave. And I often wonder what the wives were feeling during this time. I often think about Nephi's wife and how she must have felt to watch her sisters who had married Laman and Lemuel act the way that they did. And I wondered if she was just like, I don't want to do any more Sunday dinners with them. They're always making life hard for us. And I think about that moment where Nephi's told it's time to leave and move your family away. It's not going to get better. How do we know in our heart and through the Spirit if it's time to cut off a relationship for a time, or maybe forever? How do we know that God is saying to us, you know, have no more relationship with these people because things aren't getting better? And then when is it just us struggling to forgive? So I'd like to share a thought on that. Nephi stayed in a spiritual mindset so that he knew the voice of God. And when God's voice said to him, you know what, it's time to have a boundary. It's time to leave. This is the new boundary, is the leaving. I want to offer today that forgiveness sometimes is staying, and sometimes forgiveness means leaving. There's a situation in my family where I've been kind of constantly working on a certain kind of relationship, and it never seemed to get to a place where it was easy. And I kept trying and struggling, and in totally imperfection, I didn't always do things perfectly, for sure. But I did pray and plead and try until one day, a few years ago, where the Lord said, it's time to have a boundary. So that feels really sad sometimes to me because I don't want this relationship to be estranged. And so one of the things that I do, and I'm going to offer it for you, if you're in that situation where the Lord has kind of said it's not healthy to be engaged in regular contact with someone, your responsibility is then to keep a soft heart. So what I do to do that is I keep this person on the prayer roll at the temple, and I keep them in my prayers. And I also try to ask regularly from Heavenly Father if at any point He wants me to re-engage in that relationship. I hope that, like Nephi, I'm clear on the voice of God, and I'll know if that is appropriate. But the Light the World campaign has an offering for us today, an invitation to offer forgiveness. And so I'd like to talk about that for just a few minutes. I had a situation a few years ago when I've spoken about this publicly, and like I said, I'm sharing these stories not because I have it figured out, but because that's how I learn. And so I hope that in sharing my personal experiences, you'll learn with me. And I was on a committee, and there was a member of this committee that I didn't know previous, and she had been told way too many like elevated things about me, and I didn't really know her, and we were working as a committee on a big project, and we would have conference calls, which is great because you can, have the call in your pajamas, but it's not great because you can't always see people's faces. And if you don't know them well enough, you don't know what the, inflections in their voice mean and that kind of situation. And so this was all a volunteer situation. It was a big project and it had never been done before. And so we were all meeting regularly. And I would get on these conference calls and totally feel like she was always disappointed in me, and that, I needed to be fired, and that I had constantly, misstepped or not shown up in a certain way. And as the weeks went on, every time we'd have these conference calls, I found myself getting more and more frustrated and emotional. And I would get off the conference calls and at times be in tears because I just felt like, why am I not ever pleasing her? And why is she always so critical of me? And that's what I was feeling from her. Well, one day around Christmas time, we decided to have a face-to-face meeting. And so we sat together in this meeting, and at the end of the meeting, everyone was kind of filing out of the office, and she and I were the last two. And it was that awkward moment where we're trying to like go through the door kind of at the same time, and you could feel some tension. And all of a sudden, this beautiful woman flips around, stands right in my face and says, "You've really hurt my feelings." And I was shocked. I gasped. I said, "I've hurt your feelings?" I said, "You've really hurt my feelings." And she gasped. And immediately, in this miraculous moment, both of our eyes filled with tears and we hugged, which is just so funny because I'm sure that that's not a normal response, but you could feel in our hearts that we were both surprised. She went on to share with me how I was making her feel on these conference calls, and I went on to share with her how I felt like just such a loser and like I was always disappointing her in some way on these conference calls. And we just hugged and cried. And it was this moment where I realized that I had told myself a story about her, right? And she had told herself a story about me, and a wedge had started to develop. And in that moment, the wedge was removed. She was willing and I was willing, and that's not always the case. Sometimes we want to resolve hard feelings or uncomfortable feelings with someone. They don't want to do it. They just want to stay mad and keep you at a distance. And that's why I shared recently that when I was confronted with this situation, that it was time to walk away. That's sometimes the appropriate action, but it still was on me and is on me every day to keep a soft heart in case that door ever opens. But in this moment, back to my story, we hugged and we connected in a really honest way about how we had made each other feel, and we had no idea. We had no idea we were both feeling the exact same feelings. Really, we were. And oftentimes when we're offended, that's the truth. The truth is that we're probably both parties are having the same experience. That friend has gone on to become a dear friend. And a year later, during a really hard financial time for our family, she showed up in a really big way to bless our family and help us at Christmas time. And when I share this story, I can't help but get emotional because I realized in that moment that it wasn't. Sometimes we think God is giving us those uncomfortable feelings so that we'll stay away from someone. We're taught the Spirit makes us feel this like warning feeling. And so when someone's bugging us, we think that means stay away. But I have come to know that some crucial moments in my life, the adversary wants a wedge. And he sees the potential of a great relationship. So he creates hard feelings and offenses. And he tries to get a wedge in there so that a relationship doesn't develop into this powerful partnership or awareness or understanding. The scriptures say that in D&C 110:1 that something is taken from our minds and our eyes of our understanding are opened. And I think when it comes to forgiveness, that's often what happens is we need to take from our minds the story that we're telling ourselves so that our eyes of understanding could open. And that day in the office, Shalane and I had this understanding. Our eyes were open. Our minds understood each other. And we became friends instead of just acquaintances that bugged each other or even enemies. And it was heading in that direction if we weren't careful. And we were both ready to quit the committee because we were both getting tired of how we felt. The committee ended up putting on this amazing event that blessed a lot of people. And I could see where the adversary was trying to put wedges in these relationships so that something good wouldn't happen. So in closing today, I just want to share that invitation to you, that I understand that sometimes hurts and forgiveness is not meaning that we stay in someone's life. It sometimes means, like with Nephi, that eventually because of abuse or offense or something's not changing, we need to step away. We can still hold a place of forgiveness in our hearts, even if we're not engaged in an ongoing communication with that person. And then on the flip side today, this is a perfect day. Is there someone that just bugs you and offends you? Is there a church leader that has offended and not shown up in perfection and really made it hard for you to maybe go to church or serve in your calling? Can you offer them forgiveness? Can you offer them love and faith so that they can move forward in their calling? And then, like my dear friend Shalane, is there someone that maybe is the potential of being a best friend, but right now they're the person that just bugs you? Is there a wedge that if both of you show up with hearts that are willing, can you remove that wedge and have your eyes of understanding opened? I hope that this message of forgiveness adds to your day 6 of Light the World if you're participating with that as a family or as an individual. And if there's a woman of worth in your life that you want to offer the hand of forgiveness and understanding, then I hope that you'll share this video with them and tag them today and have a conversation and come with an open heart, because likely you're feeling what they're feeling and they're feeling what you're feeling. And if you could just have a conversation, what is the story you've told yourself will be taken from your mind. So that's my invitation to you. I would love to connect with you after this video on Instagram, Ganel-Lyn, or on Facebook, or on Twitter. I love seeing these videos shared, and I love seeing your comments, and I love hearing from you afterwards about the conversation that got started at 11 o'clock on Wednesday, Utah time, but hopefully continues. So Merry Christmas and blessings to you as you work forward and walk forward in your own forgiveness story. And I'll see you next week.